Let's start this off with Brandon Drury for the LA Angels. What the heck happened to Brandon Drury? He was solid from 2022 to 23, and remember, back in 2022, he was a hot trade target that year when he went to the Padres, and then this year, he's completely fallen off. A WRC plus of 34, my goodness. Now, with Christian Moore waiting in the wings, I don't see Drury going back to the Angels. For the Houston Astros, I have one of the top free agents this offseason, Alex Bregman, and simply put, I do think he's going to go elsewhere this offseason. The reason being, the Astros historically don't give out big contracts in free agency, minus Josh Hader last year for 5 years and $95 million, which was the biggest contract they've ever given out in free agency. Now, Bregman is definitely going to top that, and just like George Springer and Carlos Correa, I think Bregman is going to be on a new team in 2025. For the Oakland A's, I have Ross Stripling. Now, you might be thinking I was going to say Brent Rooker. I'll get to that in just a sec, but as for Ross Stripling, who they did trade for last offseason from the Giants, I just don't see him coming back. Had an ERA at 6. The advanced metrics were okay. Had a FIP at 3.89, but I think in the end, the A's, they're going to focus on some of the younger pitchers they have, and I think Stripling will latch on to another team next year with a decent deal. Now, as for Brent Rooker, now I would love for Brent Rooker to come to my Red Sox. My goodness, his right-handed bat would be perfect in the Red Sox lineup. He would fit a lot of lineups out there. My goodness, he was absolutely amazing this year. But a part of me wonders if the A's are actually going to trade him. Now, go back to the trade deadline. They ended up hanging on to him, and we saw the kind of trades, we saw the returns that some of these teams were getting back. So it was a bit surprising that they ended up hanging on to Rooker. And you also have to think here with the A's, they had a 13-win improvement from 2023 to 2024, and combine that with the fact that they have a lot of young players coming up the pipe, I think there's a chance that they could hang on to Rooker. I could see him maybe getting traded depending on the offer. Hey, at the end of the day, if the right offer is out there, you can definitely get moved, but I wonder if the A's end up hanging on to him. For the Blue Jays, I have Bo Bichette. For years, Bichette has been regarded as one of the top shortstops in the game because of the solid and steady bat, but this season, he completely fell off, only hitting 225 with a WRC plus of 71, a 598 OPS, had a good amount of injuries as well, only played 81 games overall. Now, he has said his goal is to play with Vlad Jr. his whole career and try to win a championship with him, but after a disappointing year from the Blue Jays, I expect them to retool this offseason, and I do expect them to entertain offers to try and improve the club, see what you can get for him in the final year of his contract. For the Atlanta Braves, I have Max Fried. Fried has been solid for the Braves over the last several years, helping them win a World Series back in 2021, and he put up great numbers this year. ERA at a 3.25, FIP at a 3.33, Fangraph wins above replacement at a 3.4, 29 starts, 174 and a third innings pitched overall. Very solid numbers. However, I do think he's going to go elsewhere this offseason. I mean, let's be real here. The Braves hand out contract extensions like candy on Halloween, but Max Fried didn't get one. Now, I think with Chris Sale showing he's healthier this year, along with one of their top pitching prospects, Spencer Schwellenbach, emerging this year, along with Spencer Strider coming back at some point in 2025, I think the Braves are going to use that money and try to help out other parts of the team, maybe bring in some cheaper pitching, because Fried, he is going to get himself a pretty decent-sized contract out there this offseason. Let's talk about Willie Adams on the Brewers. Simply put, I just don't see him going back to Milwaukee. He has been very good for them over the last few years, and this year, he put up some solid numbers at the plate, a 4.8 Fangraph wins above replacement overall, hit 251 with a 331 on base, a 462 on the slugging, a 119 WRC plus, 32 home runs. His defense was a bit down at shortstop this year, but he has a great track record of defense. It's also been reported recently that he wants to get at least $200 million in free agency this year. We know the Brewers are not going to cough up that kind of cash. I see Adames on a different team in 2025. For the St. Louis Cardinals, I have Sonny Gray. The Cardinals just signed Sonny Gray last offseason to a 3-year, $75 million deal, but it's been reported recently that they're going to be looking to entertain trade offers for him, and it's also been reported that they're looking to cut some payroll with Sonny Gray's salary increasing this year and next year. I think the Cardinals are going to try to trade him. For the Chicago Cubs, I have Patrick Wisdom. Now, one guy I was going to go with here was Nico Horner, but it recently came out of nowhere that he needed to get UCL surgery, so that pretty much eliminates any possibility of a trade there. Instead, I'll go with Patrick Wisdom. Now, remember a few years ago when Wisdom had 28 home runs, a slugging over 500? Well, since then, his numbers have steadily declined. Didn't have a good year this year, a 75 WRC plus, only hit 171, dealt with a lot of injuries as well over the last couple of years. I think in the end, the Cubs are going to non-tender under him. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, I got Jordan Montgomery. Now, I'm going to go a bit bold here, but I think the Diamondbacks, one way or another, will find a way to get Jordan Montgomery off the roster. Now, in case you missed it, D-backs owner Kendrick said, if anyone wants to blame anyone for Jordan Montgomery being a Diamondback, you're talking to the guy that should be blamed. A horrible decision to invest that money in a guy who performed as poorly as he did. It's absolutely crazy to see an owner make those kind of comments about a player because you just never see it. And hey, he's not wrong really whatsoever. The numbers were terrible this year. ERA at a 6.23 over 25 games, 21 starts, got moved to the bullpen at one point. Remember, he signed late in spring training last year. He seemed kind of out of shape this year overall. So I think in the end, the D-backs, they're going to find a way to get him off the roster, whether or not they trade him, eat some of the contract, or just straight up release him and pay him to not be on the team. For the LA Dodgers, I got Yasiel Hernandez, and man, oh man, after taking a one-year prove-it deal last offseason, this guy's been great this year. He's been hitting well this postseason after a great season, hitting .272 with a .339 on base, a slugging at .501, a .134 WRC+, 33 home runs. He won the home run derby for crying out loud. Now, I could see the Dodgers trying to keep him, but considering they already have some young outfielders in the system, along with already spending a ton of money on Ohtani and Yamamoto last offseason, I think Teoscar is going to be on a new team in 2025. For the Giants, I got Michael Conforto. Now, a part of me would love to say Blake Snell here, but I think there's a chance he could end up staying. As for Conforto, I think he'll end up going to another team, which I think would benefit him a lot, considering he hit pretty well this year, posted a WRC plus of 112, 20 home runs in a pitcher-friendly park, and with half the season at Oracle. Now, I think he would be a lot better going to a bit more of a hitter-friendly environment, so we could see even more of a boost in those numbers. For the Cleveland Guardians, I have Shane Bieber. Now, I could see the Guardians bringing him back, but since he's on the open market, I think other teams out there might be willing to offer more money than the Guardians, who historically haven't spent very big in free agency. Now, for Bieber, even though he's going to be back around the halfway point of 2025, I think he's going to get himself some decent-sized offers on the open market, considering how good of a track record he has. We know when he's healthy, he can be a top-of-the-rotation guy, and I think teams might be willing to pay a pretty penny for his services, whether it's a one-year deal with an option, maybe even, a 2 or 3 year deal with a bunch of incentives. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think Bieber, he's going to get himself a lot of offers this offseason. For the Seattle Mariners, I got Jorge Polanco. Now, the Mariners made a big trade for Polanco last offseason with the Twins, but unfortunately, the Mariners offense staggered this year, including Polanco, who did not have a very good year. Had some injuries this year, only hit .213, a .296 on base, a .355 slugging, a .92 WRC plus. Now, he did hit a bit better in the second half, but I think the Mariners are going to end up declining his club option, and they're going to check out some other options out there. For the Marlins, I have Edward Cabrera. Now, a lot of people out there are thinking the Marlins will try to trade Sandy Alcantara or Jesus Luzardo this offseason, but Craig Mish, Marlins beat reporter, has already reported that the Marlins told Alcantara that he won't be traded this offseason, and Jesus Luzardo dealt with a back injury this year that did hurt his trade value a decent amount. Now, one guy I think could end up getting traded is Edward Cabrera. It feels like forever now that he's been on the trade block, but yet he's still with the Marlins. Now, this past trade deadline, the Marlins made a lot of deals, and with Cabrera, he still has a pretty good value despite the below average numbers that he posted this year, ERA at a 4.95, FIP at a 4.68, but he has good velocity, he has good stuff, and he also has 4 more seasons of club control. I can see the Marlins trying to take advantage of that and trying to get some decent prospects in return. For the Mets, I have Shawn Mann. Now, first off, what a great year for the Mets, but also what a great year for Shawn Mann, his best season since 2021 after a couple of down years with the Padres and the Giants. Overall, he made 32 starts this year, ERA at a 3.47, FIP at a 3.83, a 2.8 Fangraph wins above replacement overall, after making some adjustments with his mechanics and the pitch mix. Because of the great year, along with having Scott Boras as his agent, I see him getting some solid offers on the open market that will price him out of David Stern's price range. For the Nationals, I got Trevor Williams, and to be honest, I think he's one of the more underrated free agents in this year's market. Now, with Williams, he had a couple of decent years back in 2017 and 2018 with the Pirates, but after a down 2023 season, I don't think many people saw coming what he did this year. He posted an ERA of 2.03, a FIP at 2.79, over 13 starts. Now, he did miss a few months with some arm issues, but he made a couple couple of starts in September, and he still pitched pretty well. I think he's definitely one of the more intriguing free agents to keep an eye on this year, but I predict the Nationals will move on, and they'll look towards some of the upper tier pitching on the market. For the Orioles, I got Anthony Santander. Santander has been great for the Orioles over the last few years, and he had a great season this year. Had a .506 slugging, 44 home runs, a 129 WRC+. He's going to get himself a good chunk of change on the market this offseason. I'm going to say somewhere around the $20 million per year range, and with the Orioles already having a lot of young outfielders looking for playing time, I see them moving on, and I think Santander, he'll get himself a nice contract this offseason. For the San Diego Padres, I got Tanner Scott. Scott's been one of the best relievers in all of Major League Baseball over the last couple of years, and this year he was amazing with both the Marlins and the Padres. Got traded at the trade deadline. Overall, over 72 games, ERA at a 1.75, FIP at a 2.92. I think he's going to end up getting something in the $12 to $16 million range per year, and with the Padres needing to focus on other areas of the team, along with thinking about extensions for Dylan Cease and Michael King, I see them letting Tanner Scott move on. For the Philadelphia Phillies, I have Carlos Estevez. The Phillies traded for Estevez from the Angels at the trade deadline, and for the most part, he was pretty solid, though his ERA and FIP went up after the trade, and his strikeout to walk ratio got worse. Now, because the Phillies already have some good relievers internally, I think they're just going to let Estevez move on. For the Pirates, I have Aroldis Chapman. Last offseason, it was a bit of a surprise when the Pirates signed Chapman, but in the end, ended up being a pretty good reliever for them. Posted an ERA of 3.79, a FIP of 3.04, along with 14 strikeouts per 9. Now, I think the Pirates are going to be more focused on adding bats this offseason, so I see Chapman moving on. For the Rangers, I have Max Scherzer. Scherzer's been dealing with a lot of injuries over the last few years, and this year he only made 9 starts for the Rangers after getting traded from the Mets back in 2023 to help them win a World Series. Now, I think the Rangers will be a bit more active this offseason after a pretty quiet one last year, but since he's 40 years old, I see them looking at other options internally, and I see them trying to get a bit younger. For the Rays, I have Yandy Diaz. Now, the Rays made a lot of moves at this year's trade deadline, but surprisingly, they held on to Yandy Diaz. My guess is they didn't get the deal they were looking for because he was on the rumor mill quite a bit, but I think since there's more time this offseason, they'll end up finding a team that's in need of a bat. He was pretty solid this year, over 145 games, hit 281, a 341 on base, a 414 slugging, 14 homers, a 120 WRC+. I think he'll be in a different lineup in 2025. For the Red Sox, I have Tyler O'Neill. O'Neill bounced back in a big way this year after a couple of injury-riddled seasons with the Cardinals, hitting 31 home runs, had a WRC+ of 131, a slugging at 511. Now, he still dealt with numerous injuries this year, only playing 113 games, and because of this, I think the Red Sox are going to look for more dependable options out there on this year's market. For the Reds, I have Nick Martinez. The Reds had a disappointing year, but one bright spot for them was Nick Martinez, who pitched both in the rotation and out of the bullpen. Overall, had an ERA of 3.10, a FIP at 3.21, over 42 games, and 16 starts. Now, he has a player option for $12 million, but I see him declining that and going out onto the open market, considering he had a Fangraph wins above replacement of 3.5, which is worth around $28 million. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get $28 million per year. In 2025, Zips projects him for a 1.1 Fangraph wins above replacement and 0.8 in 2026. Now, if you kind of go down the middle, maybe around 2 wins per season, I could see him getting around maybe 16, 17, maybe even 18 million per year. For the Colorado Rockies, I have Brendan Rodgers. The 3rd overall pick from the 2015 draft hasn't really done all that much at the major league level, and this year only had an OPS of 721 with a below average WRC+ of 88. With the Rockies, they got some young infielders in their farm system close to major league ready, so I see them trying to move Rodgers this offseason. For the Royals, I have Michael Wacha. The Royals signed Wacha to a 2-year, $32 million deal last offseason, and he proceeded to have his best season since 2017, posting an ERA at 3.35, a FIP at 3.65, over 29 starts. Now, he has a player option for $16 million, but considering he posted an F4 of 3.3, which is worth right around $27 million, I see him declining that, going onto the open market, and getting a longer-term deal. I could see something maybe in the $18 to $20 million range. For the Tigers, I got Akil Baddoo. Now, I know Tigers fans are going to be screaming from the mountaintops to please get rid of Javier Baez, but I just don't see how they're going to get rid of him at this point. He's owed over $70 million over the next 3 years. No team is going to want to take him in a trade. I don't see how they just release him when he's owed that much money over the next 3 years. That's a lot of money to give a guy to not be on your team. They've already come out and said he's going to have a role in 2025, and he did just get hip surgery, so maybe that can help him out. We'll just have to wait and see. But for now, I'll go with Yasiel Hernandez. And what the heck happened to Yasiel Hernandez? This guy was a fun player back in 2021, and he just hasn't really done anything over the last 3 years. And this year, he didn't really do anything at the major league level. 31 games, had a WRC plus of 46, had a negative Fangraph WAR at negative 0.3. He got sent down to the minor leagues a lot this year. I just don't see what role he's going to have with the Tigers moving forward. They already got a lot of left-handed bats. So at this point, I think Hernandez is going to get non-tendered. For the Twins, I have Max Kepler. After 10 years with the Twins, I expect Kepler to move on this offseason. He had a solid year in 2023, hitting 24 home runs with an OPS of 816, but this year, his numbers really took a hit. Only had a WRC plus of 94, an OPS of 682, only 8 home runs. With the Twins already having a lot of younger options at this point for the outfield, I don't see Kepler coming back. For the White Sox, I have Garrett Crochet. We all thought Crochet was going to get dealt at this year's trade deadline, but instead, the White Sox ended up hanging on to him because he wanted to get a contract extension from a team if they wanted him to pitch in the postseason. This offseason, though, I definitely think he's going to get moved. There's no reason for the White Sox to keep him. He had a great breakout year this year, had 32 starts, ERA at a 3.58, a FIP of 2.69, had a great strikeout to walk ratio, 12.8 strikeouts per 9, 2 walks per 9. Overall, a 4.7 Fangraph wins above replacement. So, yeah, it's going to cost a team something pretty good. He still has 2 more years of control before he hits free agency. But like I said, there's no reason for the White Sox to keep him at this point since they are rebuilding. So I see him getting moved. And last but not least, for the Yankees, I don't have Juan Soto. I have Gleyber Torres. I think somehow, some way, Juan Soto will finish his career in pinstripes. As for Torres, he had a solid 2023 season in which he had 25 home runs and an OPS of 800, but his numbers did take a dip this year, only 15 home runs with an OPS of 709. However, after the Yankees moved him to the leadoff spot in the second half, he did a lot better. He hit 333 over the final month, and he has hit well this postseason. For the Yankees moving forward after the World Series, though, they have a couple of younger options, including Oswald Peraza and Oswaldo Cabrera, so I think he's going to have a new home in 2025. So that's my list. Tell me what you think down below in the comments. Which other players do you think will not be back with their team in 2025? Everyone, that's all I got for right now. If you can on the way out, hit that like button for me, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.